We are evaluating the Gophers 2025 class so far. How are we feeling about this recruiting class, and also how the Gophers are preparing for 2024 and beyond?
Hey, you are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota
Whatever
Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
What up, Gopher fans? You are listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Now, today, we're going to talk about the Gophers recruiting class so far of 2025, the likes, the needs, the expectations, and more. Just a quick evaluation as we get ready to close out this month of June. Then we're going to move on to what the Gophers are doing to prepare for the Big Ten, both now and moving forward, that I absolutely love, and that is building up the trenches. And it's better than what you probably think. So we're going to dive into that, and then we're going to close it out with the Gophers ceiling in 2024. Now, if you want to talk Gophers all summer long, now, yes, we're doing 3 shows a week, starting through June and July, but once we hit August, we're back to 5 shows a week. So be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube so you don't miss any of your daily Gophers content moving forward. And let's do it. Let's do this thing. Let's jump right in. And we're talking about the Gophers 2025 class. Now, I want to talk to you about the likes that I have with this class, the needs that are still present with this class, and finally, the expectations that are probably there for this recruitment class. Now, when you're looking at this class overall so far, I believe they have 22 players committed so far for the Gophers. Now, I really like that of those 22 players, Minnesota has really attacked this class from all over the country. It's not just in the Midwest. It's not just in Minnesota. It's not your typical pipeline states, but they have 3 people coming in from California, 1 coming from Arizona, 1 from New Jersey, 1 from Oregon, 1 from New Mexico, 3 from Ohio, 2 from Georgia, 1 from Florida, 1 from Indiana, 1 from Texas, and 5 from Minnesota, along with another Midwest in the Illinois area and Wisconsin area. So it's very, very spread out. Now, you're still securing the borders, 5 coming from Minnesota, 2 of the top kids in the state. But what you love to see is the diversity amongst where in the country, the regions that Minnesota is pulling these kids from. And you can see the growth, especially on the West Coast, having a kid from Oregon, having 3 from California, having 1 from New Mexico. I mean, we're starting to hit the West Coast a little bit more with this expansion of the Big Ten. So I really like that aspect of Minnesota's 2025 class. Now, on top of that, I love how aggressive Minnesota got with the defensive line, because I have told you time and time again here on this show that my concern for the Gophers in 2024 on the defensive side of things is that interior defensive line. Now, I think Devin Eastern is an absolute beast, a mammoth, a behemoth. I think he's going to tear apart the Big Ten and really give the Gophers production. But next to him, a partner in crime, I think the Gophers still need something there, something to pop off the page and show up. Now, Kyler Baugh was a big dude. He was a big dog. He was a guy who got it done last year for the Gophers, and that tandem was really productive. But now we need somebody to fill that hole. Now, could it be Jalen Logan-Redding? Absolutely. Could it be Darnell Jeffries coming back from a season-ending injury? Absolutely. But I love to see the youth and the talent building up, and they're really, really getting after that defensive line. And in this recruiting class, same difference. You got what I was saying there, but Minnesota has 6 players that could play on the defensive line. So 6 players, some on the interior, some on the edge, but overall you have a lot of versatility, and that's adding on top of players from the last couple classes and some of the recruiting or transfer classes like Jackson Howard. Anthony Smith is still in there. Carter Menz is building in there. You've got De'Aaron Randall. You've got Martin Owusu. All of those young guys still building in there and growing with Coach Winston Thibodeau. But then you've got some of the younger guys this year coming in, a Mo Sane of Eden Prairie, But then you've also got 6 players in this 2025 class. You've got Enoch, you've got Abu, you've got Emmanuel. I think all these guys give us a ton of upside in the long term of things and to keep the trenches going. And that's just one side of the trenches. We'll talk about both sides here coming up, but I think that Minnesota getting aggressive on that defensive line shows they know where the need is for their team, and they're really moving to build it out moving forward. And then finally, I would say so far, my guys in this class, and I tend to have a couple guys that I would say are my guys in each recruitment class. Darius Taylor is one of my guys back in that class. Zaquan Bryan has been a guy I've absolutely talked about a ton on the show. Kenrick Lanier has been one of my guys from the 24 class. I usually have like 3 or 4 guys in each class that I'm just like, yes. Now, Brett Carroll, big fan of him in the 24 class. But when we're looking at this 2025 class, I think my guys would probably be Emmanuel Carmo from here in Minnesota at Cooper, number 1 kid in the state. Nelson McGuire, offensive lineman from Texas, Cameron Begall from Andover, Minnesota, and Zachary Harden, cornerback out on the East Coast. Now, those 4 guys I think are my guys in this class. I'm really looking forward to the upside they bring. They might take a year or 2 to develop and whatnot, but I think once they get to the moment where they can get on the field, I think they have the upside to be true dogs for this Minnesota Golden Gophers team moving forward. Now, talking about the other side of this class, talking about the needs, I'd say that right now, this Minnesota team still needs some high upside recruits. As of right now, Minnesota has 0 4-star guys, according to 247's ranks. Now, I wouldn't take that as 100% grain of truth when it comes to 247's recruit rankings, because they tend to kind of adjust them as they go, or adjust for helmet schools, or change things very, very beyond a recruit's actual recruitment years. But I digress. But I think compositely, if you look at this thing, they have 2 4-star guys in Emmanuel Carmo and Bradley Martino. Both those dudes, high upside. But I think if they can get 1 or 2 more top tier guys in their recruiting class that are seen that way by their recruiting rankings, and then you have your typical development gems that Minnesota and Coach Flack have continued to find, I think this class could have some special upside. So I think overall, you want to get 1 or 2 more high upside recruits that have some hype behind them. And again, I am not saying that the guys committed right now aren't doing it. I think there are a lot of gems in this class that are being overlooked, and I'm excited to see how they develop. But I think adding 1 or 2 more high upside guys could really help round this class out. On top of that, Minnesota could push for another safety, because Micah Rice, the guy they were really after, committed elsewhere to Louisville. So maybe Minnesota gets a little more aggressive in the later stages of this recruitment cycle and looks for 1 more safety commit. But otherwise, I think this class has been pretty done nicely when it comes to the diversity of the position groups in this class. But then finally, I'm not sure about the running backs. Now, I just haven't looked enough into Washington and I'm spacing on the Shane Marshall. I haven't looked into those guys enough to really give too much of an opinion on them yet. But I think if I'm being completely honest, I'm not sure what they bring to the table for a workhorse type running back. I think they can bring some awesome assets to this room when it comes to a committee style approach. But when Darius Taylor goes to the NFL, do we have someone on this roster in these young groups so far that could step up into that mold? That's where my biggest question comes right now. Fame Ijiboy has tons of athletic traits, but can he be a workhorse? JJ Wright seems like he's more of a punishing, bruising back, but can he be the workhorse? And then you look at the 2 backs in this class, both 3-star guys, but we've seen Minnesota turn 3-star guys into absolute workhorses, power backs, guys who can get it done on the vision side of things, contact balance. We'll see how it all shapes out, but I am curious to know, is the future guy of this room, the future stud beyond Darius Taylor, on the roster or committed quite yet? That's my biggest question. I think both of the guys right now are more so shots in the dark, trying to outsmart other programs. I'm not sure how I feel about it in the long term, but then again, I'm not a coach. So the Minnesota has proven time and time again that they find really good running backs. And even though these guys might not have a ton of power conference offers, Minnesota has done really well in the development of running backs. So you might have to just trust the coaching staff more on this one, as opposed to seeing who has been offered by whom. But overall, that is a question mark for me and a need for me. I would love to see a Kentrell Reinhardt maybe added to this team, or Jermecco Green added to this team, but we'll see what happens on that front. Now, finally, with the expectations of this class, I think Jackson Collick, the quarterback, if he early enrolls, can try to come in and push for the starting quarterback position next year. Now, personally, I think Drake Lindsey is likely the guy for Minnesota beyond this season, not just because of him being here for over a year or a year longer than a Jackson Collick, but more so because he has the skill set that works with this Minnesota offense, but also the intangibles are there. And I think he has a higher ceiling. You can't teach 6'6", but Drake Lindsey brings that to the field. Plus, I've been in practices with this dude already. I've looked at a ton of his high school tape, and he has anticipation. We've had him on this show, and he talked about working on his anticipation and being able to throw things open. I've seen that from him already in the early enrollee stages, and I've been impressed with what I have seen from a true freshman who early enrolled and had his first spring ball. I think Drake Lindsey has everything you need to have the excitement and be a starting caliber quarterback in the Big Ten. Plus, he has a huge arm. Plus, he has the size, like I said, but the big thing too is he takes care of the ball. Lack of turnovers throughout his entire high school career, and a very high completion percentage to go with his anticipatory throws. I love what Drake Lindsey brings, and so I think Jackson Collick could put his name into the conversation and really try to compete for it. But in the long run, if I had to put some money on it, I think Drake Lindsey is the guy. Now, that said, Collick is the higher rated prospect and has more D1 interest from a scholarship offers perspective. So it is possible that scouts view him as the higher upside guy. So that's something that could be an expectation of this class, is he could come in and compete for it right away. Another thing is that this class may be officially done once we get these final handful of recruits that we've discussed on the most recent show making their decision. Now, Minnesota has seemingly already turned the page to 2026, has 2 commitments from 2026 guys, but 2025 recruiting will probably mainly be towards maintaining their current commits and maybe adding 1 or 2 additional names. But 22 prospects committed is a lot, and it's a big class. So I think Minnesota could be almost done with this 25 class. Now, finally, the final expectation I have is I think this class, it doesn't finish as high in the rankings when it's all said and done, but I think there will be 2 to 3 guys that become absolute studs that were slept on by other programs. What are your thoughts on this recruiting class so far? Drop them in the comments below. But next, we're talking about how Minnesota is building the trenches for the Big Ten moving forward. That's what's coming up next. All right, Gophers fans, I got to tell you about our friends over at eBay Motors, because they have the winning formula for championships and for keeping your vehicle alive, and that is passion, drive, and patience. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. No matter if you're a power type of person, a style type of person, or a speed type of person, when it comes to your vehicle, eBay Motors has you covered. Now, I'm a truck dude. Maybe you don't know that. Maybe you don't assume that, but I got me a Dodge Ram and I absolutely love it. And anytime I need upgrades, anytime I need extra parts, anytime I want to style this bad boy out, I am going to eBay Motors, plain and simple, because they have roof racks, superchargers, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. And they have over 122 million parts, always keeping you and your ride or die at top of mind. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for with eBay Motors. So definitely check them out. And the best part is they have the eBay Guaranteed Fit, which means your part is guaranteed to fit your vehicle every single time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. So keep your ride or die live at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And the eBay Guaranteed Fit is for U.S. customers only. All right, Gophers fans, let's talk about how Minnesota is building up the trenches in preparation for not only this season, but moving forward. And I absolutely love it. The Big Ten got a little bigger, 18 teams in the conference. You've got Washington, UCLA, USC, and Oregon all coming into the Big Ten. We've got the West Coast schools, we got the East Coast schools, and then you've got that central hub in the Midwest. But the Gophers have always valued the offensive line. But it feels like Minnesota is truly gearing up for the trenches in this new Big Ten landscape. Now, if you take a look at recent recruiting classes, you will see this. And honestly, I think it has been very impressive. You're looking at the classes of 23, 24, and 25. Minnesota has 11 offensive linemen committed from those classes and 12 defensive linemen, including 2 transfers from those classes. So that's 23 players to build up the foundations and the trenches over the next 4 to 6 years. Minnesota is stacking up. They're focusing on player development. They're pushing. They're getting mammoth-sized dudes in here ready to try to dominate the most important positions when it comes to college football in the Big Ten. Now, if you look at these players, these 23 dudes across the past 3 recruiting classes, you will see players ranked 88 or better on 247, which is on the verge of a 4-star or actually a 4-star. You'll see 6 offensive linemen, 3 defensive linemen. That's 9 total of the 23, which is around 40% of your trenches commits being on the verge 4-star guys or actual 4-star guys. And that shows you the high upside. That shows you the potential. And you can find gems with those 3-star guys with the right size, with the right talent, with the right raw skills, hone it in, turn that player development up, and you find some more studs like you see in a Tyler Cooper who started last year and is starting this year and was the highest rated Gophers pass blocker on the team last year and one of the best pass blockers in the entire Big Ten conference according to PFF. So you've seen the gems, and then you've seen the absolute studs like a Ariante Ursery, like a Quinn Carroll, like a Daniel Faalele, like a John Michael Schmitz, who find a way to turn it in and turn it up. So overall, Minnesota has done some great things with the guys on the trenches, and they are building up to keep that going even more so in this bigger Big Ten. And you can already see the potential and the excitement for the guys on hand from the 23 and 24 classes. Greg Johnson played as a true freshman last year. I believe he started 2 games, but he got snaps in quite a few games, and he is set to start this year at the center position. On top of that, you got Phillip Daniels, who redshirted last year, but he is in a competition for the starting right tackle position through this upcoming season, through the spring, heading into the fall, and he could be a starter as a redshirt freshman. Nathan Roy early enrolled this January, and he may have already worked his name into the twos conversation with 3 starters for this year likely to be on their last year, which could put him into the conversation for a starting position heading in 2025. I think he could be the backup left tackle behind Ariante Ursery right now. Then you talk about a Brett Carroll. I've told you I'm high on him. They wanted to get him on campus as soon as possible, as soon as he graduated, to get him immersed into practices, to get him immersed into weightlifting, to get him immersed into the culture and get him learning right from jump because they see the potential upside in him. On top of that, you've got Riley Sunrum on the defensive line. Could see some work on the interior with potential need in that interior. Like I've said, maybe he could play right away as a true freshman, not saying a starter, but maybe he could find himself in some rotational snaps if it all clicks. Jerome Williams, he could potentially work his way into the 2 deep as well, being a backup center or an interior player. Those are all players who already in their true freshman or redshirt freshman years are finding ways to maybe be in that 2 deep top 10 offensive linemen on this roster. Now, Minnesota is in good hands on the interior and has some great internal leaders right now as well for these young guys. You've got Ariante Ursery, who could become a first-round pick for the Minnesota Gophers. Tyler Cooper was one of the best graded pass blockers, like I said, in the country last year, and he is a product of waiting it out and developing with the program long-term. And then you've got Quinn Carroll, who transferred in, and he had initially considered staying home with Minnesota, goes to Notre Dame, gets some time, but doesn't get enough opportunities, comes back to Minnesota, sees all this opportunity, becomes a leader of the offensive line, and he can always give you that perspective of the grass isn't always greener at these big blue blood schools, but you can find great opportunity and great coaching and great player development right here in Minnesota. Plus, if Ariante Ursery does go in round 1 or even round 2, it shows these guys, once again, it is very possible to make those pro dreams a reality here in Minnesota. Now, on the flip side, defensively, you still have vets in Josh Joyner, who could be an NFL draft pick next year. Jalen Logan Redding, who has played both inside and outside. Devin Eastern, who I think maybe not this upcoming year, but 1 year from now could be on the NFL radar as well. Danny Strigow is a good vet. Anthony Smith has been leveling up year after year these last couple years. And then you have high upside guys building in the background, like a Jackson Howard coming in, Carter Menz, who hasn't seen the field yet, Adam Kasai, who's a freak intangibles, and the top two players in the state of Minnesota for 2025 are both defensive linemen committed to Minnesota. So overall, you should be stoked with how Minnesota is building in the trenches moving forward to try and dominate in the Big Ten. All of that plus Minnesota has 2 early 2026 commits already on hand. And you guessed it, 1 offensive lineman, 1 defensive lineman. The trenches are building, and that is a priority. It's more and more clear each and every day. And the trenches are the focus, and the trenches are what could lead to sustained success. So hopefully we'll see some domination this year. Hopefully we'll see some upside, and then we'll see those young guys really step into starter roles beyond this next season after guys like Ariante Ursary, Quinn Carroll, Tyler Cooper move on to the next level. But what is the Gophers ceiling in 2024? How many wins could this team get? You've heard about the FanDuel having them at 4.5 wins over or under, but what is the upside? If everything in a perfect world happens, where could they be? That's what we're diving into to close out today's show. Coming up next. First, I want to talk to you about our friends over at FanDuel because I love sports and I love them so much that I never want them to stop. Now, the playoffs are winding down. My Boston Celtics won the championship. I am stoked. This whole week has been celebration week in the household of Kane Rob, but we get fewer and fewer games as we get to the summer, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to, but FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. You've still got the WNBA going. You've still got one more game in the Stanley Cup, and then you've got baseball going, golf going, and this summer FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a bonus or a boost daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon to start making the most out of your summer. Again, that's FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And go check out FanDuel. Check out who you think is going to pull off this last win. Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. I'm going with McDavid because this dude is an absolute beast. He's fought back from 3-0, and I think he's ready to cap it off. But check it out over at FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, Gophers fans, we're wrapping this one up, talking about the ceiling of the Gophers season in 2024. Now, you've seen the line, 4.5 wins is the under over on FanDuel. And you know what? I have been saying time and time again, smash the over. This team is not going to win 4 games or less. They are going to be above that. I believe they'll get to a bowl game for sure. But what's the ceiling? What is the best case scenario if everything went absolutely perfect? I don't think this is a team that goes undefeated. I'm going to be realistic, but what is the absolute ceiling? We've taken a look at this of sorts when we've decided the most critical games of the front half and the back half of the Gophers 2024 season. We've talked about where I think they could win, should win, have the ability to upset, and what have you. But when you look at this schedule, you think to yourself, the must wins are Rhode Island and Nevada. Should be wins are UCLA, Illinois, and Maryland. That's 5 right there. That's 5 that the Gophers should win, should be favored in, and hopefully bring home the dub. But beyond that, the 50-50 games are your rivalry games. Iowa, Wisconsin always feel like a 50-50 for both sides. And then on top of that, you've got North Carolina and Rutgers this year. I think are 50-50 games that could go either way. So right there, you got 4 50-50 games, 5 games you should win. That's 9 games right there that are a potential win if everything goes right. But is there anything else on the schedule? Well, I would say a possible upset game is the USC game at home, and maybe that could turn into upset, but then the likely losses are Penn State and Michigan. So with that mentality, your win outcome range could be between 5 wins and 10 wins. I think that's kind of the range and the span that you could see from a worst case to a best case. But with all of that said, the only way you get to 10 wins is by taking care of business versus your favorable games. Like I said, those should wins and the must wins. And then on top of that, winning all of your 50-50 games and pulling off an upset. That's a lot to do. That's a lot of great football. That's a lot of some luck going your way, but it's tough. It's not impossible, but it's tough. Now, the only way you get to 10 wins is by taking care of business. Or if you're should win games, when you're looking at the Gophers schedule and the layout of this year, it plays favorable, and it 10 wins isn't impossible. Like I said, it's tough. But like I said, of your should wins, 3 out of the 5 are at home and 2 are on the road, but they aren't in hostile environments. So 5 out of 5 are in a way that you should be able to win it. 3 at home, like I said, take care of business at home. That's 3 wins right there. The 2 on the road are not in hostile environments. Their fan bases typically don't show out, and that's Illinois and that's UCLA. You win all 5 of those, you're sitting pretty in one game away from a bowl game. So that means you have 4 50-50 games after that. If you win one of your 4 50-50 games, you're already bowl eligible. But if you split your 50-50 games, 2 home and 2 away, which is how the Gophers have it set up, hopefully you win both the home 50-50 games, and then it comes down to what does the environment look like for your away ones. And when you're looking at the Gophers schedule, you see that these 50-50 games sit in the most favorable outlook for the Gophers, because North Carolina and Iowa are coming to Minnesota. If you flip that and you send them to Iowa and you send them to North Carolina, those are more hostile environments. Those are games that are extremely hard to win. Those are games that being at home can really flip the script, but those are here in Minnesota, and that's exactly what you would want to see in order for the Gophers to hopefully be on the plus side of that 50-50 matchup. And then you look at Wisconsin and Rutgers being the 2 on the road. And you know what? Those 2 are much more so the ones I would want on the road, because if you look at how Minnesota has played Wisconsin under PJ Fleck, he has played better in Wisconsin than he has here at Minnesota. In his 3 matchups on the road versus Wisconsin, he has a win of 37-15. He has a loss in overtime, 20-17. So down to the wire, had the absolute chance of winning that game. And then the last one was a win as well, 23-16 versus Wisconsin. So he has had the opportunity and been on the cusp of winning against Wisconsin in Madison every single time he's gone there. So hopefully you can keep that momentum going. Now, PJ has been, or he's won or been in the fight, extremely in the fight every time he goes to Madison. So you aren't worried about the potential flip of the crowd in that one. And then on top of that, you're not worried about the Rutgers crowd. Plain and simple. Now, it should be a fun game with Athan out there, Kirk Shiraka out there, Flip Dixon out there, Harris Simiak out there, tons of Gopher ties. So it should be a motivated game, but I don't think that the crowd for Rutgers will be too hostile for Minnesota. So that sits, the 50-50s sit well for Minnesota. And then finally, you've got your potential upset game with USC, and luckily for the Gophers, that's here at home, which is exactly what you want. So the schedule is laid out as best as you could ask for, to be honest, but it might not be likely. But I think the ceiling is 10 wins plus a bowl game. Now, that isn't the most likely. So what is the most likely? In my opinion, it's probably 7 wins plus or minus 1 win. If you win the 5 you should be, and split the 50-50s, you sit at 7. If you go 1-3 in your 50-50s, or you drop a should be win, but win more of the 50s, it all probably averages out to about 7 or 6 wins for the Gophers. With the amount of returning production, with the amount of experience you have coming back, 7 wins seems like the most likely scenario for the Gophers. Hopefully they can do better than that. Hopefully they don't do worse than that, but it should be a fun run for the Gophers in 2024. That's going to do it for us on today's show. I hope you liked it. I hope you will hit subscribe. I hope you'll leave some comments down below, and I will talk to you again, where we're going to talk later this week about Cam Christie, who could be the first Gopher drafted in the first round since 2004. We're going to jump into that later this week. Until then, row the boat, Sky Umaga Gophers, as always, and don't forget to hit subscribe.